now, this is going to be a quick recording on Human Biology Exam 3. Specifically, this is going to cover the topics of nervous tissue, the central nervous system, the peripheral nervous system, and primarily the special senses. Alright, so with that in mind, I'm going to say the following. This test is going to have a great deal of material on special senses. Special senses are some of my favorite things to talk about. It's going to happen. I'm going to talk at length about the special senses. You're going to hear all about it. Let's proceed. All right, nervous tissues. All right, nervous tissues. For you, I would like to know the differences between neurons and neuroglial cells. So there are different types of cells in the nervous system. There are neurons, and then there are lots of different types of neuroglia. Neuroglia being that nerve glue. There are astrocytes, which clean up after neurons. There are oligodendrocytes in the central nervous system that make myelin. There are Schwann cells that are very important in the peripheral nervous system that make myelin. And for that matter, I want to know what the heck myelin is and why it's there and what it's for and what it means when it's present. Okay, and I'll go back into that in just a second. Now, in the realm of neurons, I want to know about axons versus dendrites. So axons send messages away from the nerve cell body, whereas dendrites receive messages towards the nerve cell body of that neuron. And in the realm of neurons, you need to understand that there are sensory neurons bringing information to the central nervous system. There are interneurons in the central nervous system that allow us to process information, be that in the brain or spinal cord, but interneurons all the same. And then motor neurons that send messages on down the line. I can pretty well guarantee you on this test there will be a big matching block where the answers are sensory, motor, and interneurons. Okay? So sensory neurons will send information from the brain and spinal cord out. Motor neuron... Oh, I messed that up. Hang on. Sensory neurons receive information. There we go. That's better. Sensory neurons receive information, bringing it into the brain and spinal cord. Interneurons process information in the brain and spinal cord, and motor neurons send information out from the brain and spinal cord to go out and do an action. Motor, to do work, all right? Motor neurons. So you can guarantee that's coming. And further, if I were you, I would have a grasp of how these neurons interact with one another. Like, what is a synapse, okay? What is an action potential traveling down an axon? What do I mean when I talk about a neurotransmitter? Like, how does a neurotransmitter work in terms of crossing a synaptic cleft and binding to an adjacent neuron? So what is a synapse? What are neurotransmitters? How does all this fit together? Big block of matching, sensory, motor, and interneurons. Okay, now on to the central nervous system. In the central nervous system, I would know about the brain and spinal cord. I would know about how the brain and spinal cord are encapsulated in bone for the most part and protected therein. I would know about how the brain includes both gray matter and white matter. Gray matter being the locations of nerve cell bodies, whereas white matter being the myelinated axons, in essence, coming off of the gray matter. So you have a great deal more white matter because you have to have these nerve cell bodies sending and receiving information. All that sending and receiving is going to be passing through the white matter. So the white matter is where you find that myelin in the central nervous system. Gray matter, nerve cell bodies, where the physical processing occurs. All right, in terms of the brain, I would know about the lobes of the brain. What is the frontal lobe for? Like social judgment, your general mood, if you will. What are the parietal lobes for? What are the occipital lobes, or the occipital lobe for? Like processing vision. Like, where do you process smells? Where do you process hearing? Where do you process sight? Like, these are things you need to know about the brain. So be able to tell me about the lobes of the brain and their functions and general concepts therein. Tell me about the cerebellum. Tell me about how it's your little autopilot center, how it helps you to coordinate your motor functions with the rest of your body and certain forms of interpretation. So tell me about the lobes of the brain. Tell me about the cerebellum and sort of what it's for. Tell me about the hypothalamus and sort of what it's doing. Like, there are things you need to know here. All right. You also need to be able to walk me through the blood-brain barrier. So understand that your blood is not in as intimate a connection to your brain as your blood is to the rest of your body. There's all sorts of chemical variances within your blood that could cause issues with the brain. So we have a blood-brain barrier which helps to shield the brain from certain materials found within the bloodstream, which is a good thing. All right. be able to walk me through the degenerative brain disorders. You can pretty well guarantee that you're going to come into contact with these in your future. So like ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease, stroke, Parkinson's, you need to be able to identify the key characteristics of these and know a little bit about each one. Like, again, you will see these in your work. You will see these in your daily lives. You need to be familiar with them. And I'm going to say you need to be especially familiar with a stroke. Like, strokes are things that we can normally take care of if we address them quickly enough. So you need to be able to recognize the characteristics of a stroke and know what comes next. All right? In other words, getting somebody to a hospital. So be able to tell me all about it. All right. Peripheral nervous system. If the brain and spinal cord are the central nervous system, then the peripheral nervous system is everything else. In essence, all of the sensory neurons, all the motor neurons that we're going to be primarily talking about, those are peripheral nervous system items. If I were you, I would be able to tell me all about Schwann cells. All right, all about Schwann cells, making myelin. What's myelin for? Tell me about saltatory conduction versus continuous conduction. So a nerve without myelin sends a constant signal down its length, whereas a nerve with myelin will send what's referred to as saltatory conduction. The conductive signal bounces from node to node to node to node to node, causing a nerve with myelin to have faster transmission speed. All right, so what are Schwann cells? What is myelin? This is in the peripheral nervous system, and how does it change the way that nervous transmissions are sent? And from there, I'm going to jump straight into the special senses, all right? And I've got a lot on this. So what are mechanoreceptors? Where would you find mechanoreceptors in your body? What are thermoreceptors? What are chemoreceptors? Tell me about your special senses and which ones involve chemoreceptors. What are photoreceptors? And tell me the types of photoreceptors that you have, right? Tell me about the retina and how your retina contains rods and cones being your photoreceptors. Tell me about how rods deal with kind of like black and white vision, contrast variances, the ability to see in the dark, that's going to be your rods, whereas the cones are going to deal with bright colors, vibrancy, high definition, being able to see and read clearly when there's enough light in the room. Tell me about, in the retina, your main focal point of vision, being your fovea centralis, and how it's mostly cones because you're a human being, okay? Mostly cones there. Tell me about the Macula Lutea, which surrounds the fovea centralis, and how it continues to nourish the fovea centralis. Like, if I were to ask you about macular degeneration, I would ask what that condition entails and what you might learn from that, all right? Let's see. Good. I think that'll do. In the eyes, if I were you, I would walk me through the near response. There were a few slides on the near response, like what's accommodation, what happens with the pupils and their diameter of the iris, what happens with the lens and squeezing and stretching the lens. Like, walk me through the near response and kind of tell me all about it. For that matter, tell me about what it means to be nearsighted versus farsighted. So a person with a perfect emmetropic eye versus a person with myopia versus a person with hyperopia. Tell me about what the eyeball looks like and what it means for the individual to be nearsighted versus farsighted. In the ear, walk me from the outer ear, all right, collecting sound waves, hitting the tympanic membrane, to the middle ear where you find the ossicles being a means of sort of amplifying sound waves as they pass into the inner ear, and also the ossicles serving as an emergency cutoff if necessary. So if you hear very loud sounds, you get that ringing in your ears, that's your ossicles. All right, that's your ossicles. Tell me what that's doing. Tell me about how they amplify sound waves under certain circumstances and how they can quieten sound waves given other circumstances. And then take me into the inner ear. Now, first comment. You need to understand that your inner ear is not just hearing. The inner ear, with the cochlea and the organ of Corti, deals with hearing. But there is also equilibrium sense taking place in the inner ear. You need to walk me through the vestibule and its maculae, macula saculi, macula utriculi, and how they deal with your perceptions of lateral motions, up, down, right, left, forward, backwards. Walk me through, in the inner ear, your semicircular canals, and how they deal with rotational motions with their cupolas and their cristae ampullari. And then again, take me through the cochlea itself with its organ of Corti and its hair cells. Tell me how you sense pitch versus loudness. All right? Tell me how you sense pitch versus loudness. Walk me through those ear structures and sort of how they work. Let's see, what all did I skip here? Okay, so in your sense of smell, tell me how you smell things, like where in the body you would find those receptors. Tell me about how your nasal conchae work in terms of conditioning air as it comes in. Tell me about your eye support structures, so lacrimal apparatus. Tell me about the like functions of eyelids, eyebrows. Tell me about inside the eye, the vitreous humor versus aqueous humor, where these are found, why the vitreous humor is old versus why the aqueous humor is considered young. Yeah, man, absolutely. Walk me through sort of how that functions. And the term glaucoma might come into mind. I want to know what that is. Let's see. Oh, we haven't done taste. So taste, walk me through the tongue and how we perceive flavor. What are papillae, the papillae on the tongue? Where would you find taste buds? And how do taste buds work? Tell me about how quickly they replace themselves. Tell me about how they are used to sense chemicals. Tell me about how different parts of the tongue interpret different flavors. And folks, I think that's a pretty good walkthrough of the major parts here. Now, is that everything I'm going to ask you on the test? Probably not, but that is the vast majority, and I think that should give you a real leg up on the competition, if you will. So you guys have a great day. This has been a review for Test 3 in Human Biology. Good luck. I hope you do fantastically well.